Today, I'm talking about, honestly, this is the number one thing that I talk to parents about in our brain behavior reset program. It is picky eaters. How do we deal with picky eaters? And even more than picky eaters, how do we deal with kids with ARFID, who are restricted eaters? What do we do? So I want to talk to you about my number one picky eaters hacks, but it's really a hack. It is actually, are you ready? Sensory techniques. So what I have found when kids become restricted eaters, and there's a variety of reasons why people become restricted eaters. Sometimes it's just because this is the way that our kids start eating and the rest of the kids eat that way. So it's, what foods are we providing them? Sometimes it's their taste buds. Sometimes it's sensory processing. There's nutrient deficiencies that drive cravings of certain foods, but sensory issues seem to be one of the biggest drivers that is surprising for parents. Yesterday, I was with one of my families in our brain behavior reset program, and we spent the majority of our time talking about picky eating. How could we manage it? What can we do? They're seeing that the oldest child, who is a picky eater due to having a clinical issue, but then having sensory issues, is actually causing all the other kids to be picky eaters because, he demands only chicken, the classics, the chicken nuggets. He likes chips. And really just a few foods. There was maybe 5 or 6 foods on the list. And they fell into the pattern of, wow, I have to feed my kid these foods or he won't eat. And, for some kids, it's very true. And I want to honor that because when you have things like ARFID, you have an official eating disorder, something that is getting in the way. But many kids with ARFID have sensory processing. So let's talk about sensory techniques because when we implement sensory techniques, and if you're in our Calm Brain community, if you're, have purchased our self-regulation mastery blueprint, we have a sensory diet in there. We have all different types of techniques that with the click of the button, just search the words, you get ready to use super actionable, easy techniques. And you get my how-tos. So how-tos are how to do anything and role plays. So even just to talk to your kid about sensory, we actually have the verbiage, right? So you don't have to just be trying to figure this out. God help us. None of us were equipped for our neurodivergent kids, including myself. You really have to work with an expert. And that's what I've done. I drilled it down and it's continuing to grow, not just in our members, but the people, the types of issues, the questions. So when we talk about sensory techniques, what am I talking about? You're like, Dr. Rowe, what are you talking about? So when the nervous system becomes dysregulated due to troubles, challenges, whatever you want to call it, due to sensory processing, that means your child is being under or overstimulated by any information coming in through their senses. And so that could be the toilet flushing. It could be a sudden sound. It could be a touch of any kind. It can be fabric, socks, clothing. All of these things can cause the nervous system to dysregulate, right? And when the nervous system dysregulates, you can see understimulated behaviors like difficulty focusing, task initiation, slow processing, forgetfulness, or overstimulation, right? So we could see anger and irritation, the big emotions. These are all signs of a dysregulated kid. And so when we bring in sensory techniques for a picky eater, right? It's my number one picky eater hack is to do sensory support, right? You're like, what do you mean? It has nothing to do with food. It has everything to do with food. So when we think about our kids who are, whether they have a clinical diagnosis of, ADHD or autism, or they have anxiety or they have pandas, they become restrictive in their foods, often due to the textures, right? So they might only crave crunchy food or really salty food in taste, right? So these are all sensory components that affect them. So when we do sensory regulation activities, right? And occupational therapists are amazing at this. Don't go to places like Brain Gym. They don't know what they're doing. Go to an OT for sensory support, right? They know what they're licensed professionals. They're not college students working through their summer vacation. So you can Google Brain Gym and find the same activities, and they're awesome too. And I would encourage you to do that at home. That's something we do in our program as well. So when it's sensory techniques, what are some things that can help us specifically with food? So if you're doing this on your own and you have access in our program to these techniques and the ways to kind of figure this out, is we have to dissect. Is your kid craving what we call proprioceptive feedback, deep pressure? Are they craving visual stimulation or down or dialing it down? Like, what are they actually craving? And you could do this by observation of your child and kind of really figuring out, oh, well, they're always on a swing, or, my Max would cry with socks, would cry. Right. So I had to get socks. To this day, he has to wear socks without seams in them. They seem to just really make him physically uncomfortable. He doesn't cry about it. He just lets me know now. Thankfully, we've evolved. So we want to kind of see where it is. And then we have to say, what are things that are going to regulate my child? So if your child is, always grabbing on your dog or your sibling or any of those kind of things, or they seek you out for hugs, they need deep pressure. So we want to give them appropriate forms. That's what a sensory diet is. And I break that down in our community, and you can go in there and find different techniques, but we want to use those. But specifically for the mouth, my favorite technique for the mouth is actually taking a electric toothbrush, and you can use it in two ways to help get some of the resistance down to textures and tastes. So number one, you turn it on and you use it without toothpaste in the mouth before they eat, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, could even be 20 minutes. Like, some of your kids need that much time. Or you take your toothbrush, and if I was home, I would have grabbed mine, and you turn it on and you take the handle side and you massage it along the face. And you do that 1 or 2 minutes on each side, very gently. When I would do this with my kids, they just got used to it, right? And what that's doing is desensitizing and stopping your kids from being so resistant. And both of these, again, you're going to do these anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes in advance, play around with the different times. And then with that, when it comes to the picky eating, you want to lean into the texture they like. So if they're a crunchy kid, take chicken, chop it up in tiny bite-sized pieces, get yourself gluten-free panko and fry it up in the pan, right? With, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, healthy oils. Lean into those textures and do those things together. And, always offer your kids a lot of things. But my number one technique is sensory. There are other sensory things in the sensory diet profile. I'm just sharing the oral desensitization method that I feel like, geez, it's helped me with my own kids. And I recommend this all the time with our people. So if you have questions, you're looking for more support, you know where to find me. If you're in our community, you can just ask questions, which is amazing. So wherever you are, know the diet is important. I know it's hard, but it really is the fastest way to help reset a dysregulated nervous system. It doesn't feel like it's the fastest way, but I promise it is.